All right. Right. Looks good. Looks good. We're back. So we're gonna get started. A couple things I wanna hit on a couple things. So let's go. Our decisions. So I want to kind of break down what starts to happen during ascension and why we feel like our decision-making process is terrible, why we feel like we're failing, why we feel like we've done the whole process wrong, and why all of a sudden, well, it will feel like all of a sudden, even though this occurs over many linear years, it feels like it starts to get better. Like we start to all of a sudden understand and be able to make a choice that is a soul-aligned choice, a highest aligned choice in that moment of what we're going to do next. Whereas in the beginning, we feel like we don't know what we're doing. You know, we don't know which way to go. So we've already discussed how waking and ascension, they're two different parts. You know, we go through our awakening. Some people call that dark night of the soul. To me, you can have an awakening, which is really just something that jolts you. It jolts you into wanting to expand into higher consciousness, wanting to get into that seeker phase of higher consciousness. That's to me what awakening is. Would I say it's a dark night of the soul? I think it's part of the dark night of the soul. I also feel like you go through different parts of that during your ascension process too. I don't feel like dark night of the soul, which is, I don't know, I don't really like that term either because this makes the soul sound, it isn't dark, but that's just how most people identify with that part of the process. So if you go through your awakening and your ascension, to me, there are challenging parts in both. And I don't know if I could say that awakening was harder than ascension. To me, ascension was much harder than my awakening process. So we go through our awakening. We start going through our ascension. Because in awakening, we start activating a consciousness. We start activating ourselves through a consciousness, but we haven't embodied the consciousness. That's what ascension is for. So there's some things that activate a consciousness, but it can be years and years and years later before you actually embody in that consciousness. So there's a lot of trials and tests along the way to embody in that consciousness. It doesn't happen overnight. And that's kind of the misconception we have and why we always feel like we're way farther along in the process than we are, because we activate the consciousness. We can activate all of our superpowers, you know, clairaudience, clairvoyance, telepathy, which I really prefer the term ESP, but we're going to use telepathy just for today. We start activating all these different skills. We start being able to dream, really be more active in the dream world, really be able to shape the dream world. We have to be able to see all that stuff. And we look at all of it and we're like, wow, like this is, you know, this is everything. And it's not everything. It's a very, very small part of our process. But when we're in that moment, we think we've done it all. We think we've gone through the whole thing. We think we're just about finished with it. And you see a lot of people that'll go online and do videos, and I did the same thing, talking about, you know, all the stuff we've done, thinking we've done a lot more than we actually have done. When at the time, we've just really activated a consciousness. We're not living from that consciousness. We've just activated higher consciousness. We're starting to see some things in our life improve. We're starting to understand why certain things happen. But we still haven't shifted anything, really haven't changed anything. We're kind of playing around. We're like little kids that just started getting a new toy, you know, and all of a sudden we feel like we've mastered the toy, and then we realize, oh no, there's 7 or 8 more things we can do with it. By the time we don't know that. We think we've done it all. And that's why we're so far, we feel like we're way farther ahead than we actually are. So everyone goes through this type of process where you feel like you've done it all and you haven't really done much yet at all. Because embodying the consciousness, so we get into 2-strand DNA, you get into this holding the energy, being with the energy, and then you get into actually embodying the energy, which means we're acting from that energy. And acting from that aspect, whether it be Christ aspect, your galactic aspects, God aspect, your angel aspect, your galactic warrior aspect, your, you know, archangel aspects. There's so many, your mermaid aspect. I mean, there's so many different parts and pieces of us. And we've talked a lot also about different dimensional realities, where we talk about Atlantis, you talk about Lemuria, and about how these civilizations ended, because, especially Atlantis, because it became corrupt, because it was the people became too powerful. So we still have that kind of embedded into our DNA that we don't want to hold that much power. We still don't want to take that much power on. Though this time we do have a fail-safe where you can only get more power when you activate a certain level of purity to get more and be able to see more and be more and do more, in a sense. So we have that fail-safe built in. So when you're in these parts of the process, you can get kind of like, oh, I don't want to have that much power. Oh, I don't want to be able to see so much. I don't want to be able to know so much. And you can be kind of overwhelmed in this process. I see a lot of people, I don't remember me so much being overwhelmed by it, but mine didn't come as fast as I think some people's probably came. My clairaudience did, but the rest of it, not so much. And I also had someone that was kind of assisting me at the time to understand that stuff. Whereas if you don't really have that, and a lot of the stuff is coming really quickly for you, it can be overwhelming. You don't really understand it, and it can feel like it's too much. So, which, because we feel so overwhelmed, we think we've done it all because, wow, this is hard. This just beginning of the process is hard. And we haven't gotten to the part where we have to really start aligning everything, when our human lives start to collapse. And that's the part you don't hear that many people talk about. Because everyone's trying to sell that it's just midnight roses and everything's amazing. And I can remember doing an interview years ago, and I always talk more about the parts of ascension that are the rougher parts, because I feel like those parts aren't discussed as much. Everybody wants to focus on the magic and the beauty of living, creating soul-aligned realities, but not the work it takes to get there. And we don't just wake up one day and arrive in them. We can touch the consciousness of them, but we don't just wake up one day and we're there. And anyone who's selling that, they're selling something that's not real. That's not that quickly attainable. It takes years and years and years and years to rewrite your DNA to be able to get to those spaces and get to those realities. Because there's so much of our stuff that's in the way. So we start to think about, we start off thinking we're farther than we are, thinking we know more than we do, wanting to help everybody else because we think we know more than we do, overstepping our boundaries, being in that corrupt point of Atlantis where we have the powers, but we're trying to really meddle and being up in everybody's business. Because we feel like we know more than everyone else. We can see more. We put ourselves in a hierarchy, and there's a reason for that. One, we never felt special as humans, so when we start getting all these extra special powers, in a sense, we feel that we know more. We want to put ourselves higher. We want to feel special, and we go through that part of the process. So we keep kind of doubling down on higher consciousness. We double down. We keep trying to take all these things, all these metaphysical concepts, all these things we're working with, all these things we're using to raise our consciousness. And what starts to happen is kind of a byproduct, is our body's vibration starts to raise. In the beginning, it's kind of a byproduct. Unless you really have done a lot of deep diving on consciousness, or listen to this channel, because I know we talk about it. Your body's vibration is what's important. That's what has to raise. The consciousness raises and it pulls the body up with it, because the body has to clear to raise its vibration. You can't get into any different realities if your body's vibration is still setting at the vibration you started with. So you can't just touch a consciousness and go, okay, now my body's at consciousness. That takes time. It takes a lot of purging of the body. It takes a lot of clearing of the programs in the body. You have to recognize your programs to see what you're doing to clear the programming. Because our body has to arrive in these frequencies. We can't just touch the consciousness. The body vibration is the most important thing. That's why a lot of times in these phases we're sleeping a lot, and we're doing a lot of these things to raise the body's vibration, and we start getting out of realities that we find we do our own version of aligning realities. We will start pruning a branch here and there. I don't want to go to that yoga class. I don't feel like that's aligned anymore. I don't know. I don't agree with these people in a sense. I don't resonate with them anymore. I don't want to go there. I don't want to do this anymore. I'm going to change my major. I'm going to change my relationship. There will be a lot of things that we choose to let go of. And we feel, and sometimes that's not easy, especially, I don't want to paint that part as a super easy part. But these are ones that we're kind of doing on our own. We kind of feel it's unaligned. We feel like we need to get out of it. It might be an emotional cord of attachment we have to it, but we're still kind of willing to let it go. You know, we're willing to try to align it, bring some mutual respect to the reality, and if we can't get it, we're willing to go forward without the reality. But these are kind of the low-hanging fruit realities. We really don't care that much about them. You know, I always say if you can't align something going on at your, in your yoga class, forget about trying to align the ones that are really deep-rooted later on and realities with people you really have relationships with and not just acquaintances, because that's when it gets tougher. So if you can't do it here, forget about trying to talk to your mom about something if you can't talk to your yoga instructor about something. So these are kind of testing grounds. We kind of feel it. We know it's not aligned. We'll fix it. We're going to try to align it, and then we're going to move on, right? Then we get to another part. And I'm skipping a lot of other parts, but this is kind of giving an overview of what starts happening to your realities. The ones we self-prune a lot, right? We self-prune. We get rid of some stuff. Be like, oh, I feel like the timeline for this job is over. I'm going to go here. I can see everything lining up. I can see so much more. I understand. I can feel the energy. You might be getting into Reiki. You might be doing human design work. You're doing all this stuff to activate consciousness, activate consciousness, activate consciousness. And then your body starts to raise this vibration. You start trying to embody that consciousness. And when you start embodying the consciousness, then anything that's not aligned with that consciousness has to go. Now, these are not normally things we want to go. Sometimes our job will go, and we might not be able to find another one because our universe is saying, no, you can't go do that anymore. So every door we try to go through to bring things back to some kind of human normal, they're all shut now. We can't go back into those. We can't subject our body to these realities anymore. So everything starts getting closed down. So we're like, okay, well, how are we going to support ourselves? I'm used to making this much money. My reality is built on this much money, and now I'm making, 5% of that. How I can't keep all these realities going. I don't have the monetary support to do that. Because human realities are not going to support soul-aligned realities. One, they don't value it. So if a human doesn't value it, they're not going to put their money into it. And for a while, we don't want to put our money into it, and then we get to a phase where we do want to put our money into it, because if we won't invest in the stuff that we want, why would we expect anybody else to? If we don't value it, why would anybody else value it? So we get into a different part, a different part of the process, a different part of what we're trying to do. We're going to keep going farther. So now we get to a place where we might lose our house. We might lose our car. We've lost our job. We're not sure what we're going to go do. Our relationships crumble down around us. Everything we had an identity to, everything we looked at as making us valuable in the human realities, they're now gone. We don't have them anymore, because your universe is also showing you don't need any of that stuff to be valuable. You can't judge a soul-aligned reality by any human standard. You can't judge if it's successful or not. You also can't judge yourself on what you have, and you can't feel a self-worth on what you have in the exterior. These are all things that are not soul-aligned. These are all human-aligned things, and when we're trying to align our realities in the beginning, we think our soul-aligned realities are just more of human stuff. I'll have more money, I'll have more cars, I'll live on the islands, and it's not that this stuff can't come. But by the time it comes, it's more for the whole and not for ourselves. In the human, every reality we build for ourselves. It's not for humanity. It's not for everybody else. So we have to go through a lot of process of, and we're going to see it as a loss. Our human's going to see this, I'm losing. And I remember when I went through this phase, I'm losing everything. I'm losing everything I worked so hard to build over so many years of a human life. I'm losing all of it. Everything was getting lost when it was really getting aligned, because none of those things were aligned on a soul level. None of those relationships, none of the things I had, none of the ways I identified myself were aligned, right? So human season, I'm just losing everything. Then we get into, I'm failing at ascension because everyone else I see looks like everything's perfect, and my life is completely going down the drain, and I don't understand what's going on. How come everyone else is talking about how great it is, and I've lost everything? And that's what it feels like, because none of that stuff's aligned, right? So we think, well, I don't know how to make a choice. I was trying to make decisions and we're not getting answers. So it kind of goes back into my topic for today, which is, at this point of the process, we don't feel like we even know. We're waiting for answers. We're waiting for something to come. Things come not the way we want them. So we either don't want to take them because we have too much pride to take them, or we don't want to take them because it didn't come the way we wanted it, right? So then we keep waiting for something to come exactly the way our human wants it to come. Through the person we want to give it to us, through the way we want to be able to earn it, how we want it to happen. So we go through all of that too. This is like going to be the 30 minute big overview on ascension and some of the bigger parts of it. Now, why do we have to lose everything? There's many reasons for this. Now, I can also look back and see where there's a lot of things I could have aligned, and there was a lot of clues I had along the way that this needs to get better, you need to get better with this, you can't always depend on making this much money, you have to get better at this and this and this and this, and I ignored it, right? I didn't want to change anything, I didn't want to shift anything, even though I would think I was semi-conscious, I have very selective hearing on what I wanted to hear and what my human wanted to hear, because my human was still predominantly in making the choices in that sense and in that time. So I had this thing where I kind of knew certain things I probably needed to do, but I didn't want to do them. So was I getting an answer? Sure, it wasn't what I wanted. So I was like, oh, I'm just really not getting one. Because you still can't see everything. Once we start activating the energy to embodying the energy, can be, 2, 3, 4, 5 years later. I know I was in a 5-year period of really not much coming in to rebuild a new life. It was more letting the old one keep tearing away until there was nothing left of the old one. You'd have years where a lot of stuff went away, and then I might get a reprieve for a few months where things would stabilize, and then we'd be right back in it again. Because our body templates are rewriting. If we got stuff to rebuild our realities and rebuild our life, we rebuild it the same way. And it would still be not aligned. It would still be built to a human construct and standard, because we still have so much of that in our body, so much belief systems in that. We would rebuild it the same way. And I would have rebuilt it the same way because I didn't know another way. I didn't understand. I didn't understand that it wasn't aligned. I didn't understand that none of this stuff is how I want to see it or how I want it to look. Soul non-realities are not what the human dream is. It's not, and that's why so many people in the human dream, are not happy. And it doesn't matter what they have. They don't really want to be there. They're just in it to impress everybody else, to make someone else believe that they're doing better than they are. And social media is huge on that, all throughout. So we don't really get a lot. And it can be not getting a lot for a long, long time until you understand what you're supposed to build. And this, 20 minutes later? Yeah, about 20 minutes later, we get to the part where, okay, I didn't know why anything was happening before. Because all of our emotions about the loss, grieving our old human realities, which is super important to do, we get into all those things and we get into all that grief. And all that stuff starts clearing, and we can then start to understand why it had happened that way. We can start getting an answer on what do we do now. An answer of a higher line reality. Maybe at that moment it's not the highest of the high, but maybe we can't get right there right now. But it's still higher aligned. It is soul aligned. It might not be soul aligned in 5 weeks, but it's soul aligned right now. You can start to see the answer. We start to understand. And there's a big reason for that is we can also see down the road. You can see the timelines. You can understand how things are going to turn out in a certain reality. So you understand why all these other choices your human might want to do don't make sense. Because you know what's going to happen 6 months from now. You know this reality is going to turn this way. You know what's going to happen here. You know what's going to happen here. So where our choices get better because of the foresight we have into what's happening with these realities. We understand why we're in this one. We understand what's going to break. I'm going to use the word break, but what's going to realign? Realign's a better word. What's going to realign over here? What's going to realign over there? What's the best thing for me to do right now? Do I hold? Do I go ahead and move if we feel like my human wants to move? Is now the time? Is there 6 other things pins that have to fall before that's the aligned choice to make? Whereas in our human consciousness, we can't see that far. We can't see the timelines. We can't see the intersections. We can't see what we need to do next. So we kind of just do with what our human belief says we need to do. I need to go do this. I need to work super hard. I need to make sure I'm getting everything that I need, and I don't really care about anybody else. I'm not going to worry about the other 10 people in the reality. I'm just going to worry about myself. That's what our human consciousness does. That's all our human consciousness does. It doesn't really look at anyone else in the reality. The more you expand your consciousness and embody in, and that's living from that consciousness, clearing out all the programming, starting to see your programming and seeing what you're doing, and when you're going back into the same shit all over again, when you're going back into the same realities all over again. We start to get really picky about what we entertain. We start to get, and I will say, kind of frustrated after a while, waiting for things to come to rebuild. But there's a reason for that. Because we don't exactly see the whole thing yet of how we're going to rebuild it. If we got what we needed to rebuild it in that moment, we would rebuild it the wrong way again. We would not rebuild it on the highest aligned way we could rebuild it, because we can't see that yet. So our decision making gets better. It starts to improve because of the foresight we have on what's happening. And we start to trust ourselves more. Because once you've lost everything that our human identified with, and you're working through all the judgment of that and the human perception of that and our human perception of that and how we judge ourselves on the things we had and all those things that are not what soul line realities are about. Because soul line realities are for the whole. Because technically, none of our souls are separated. We're all the same. It's all, people would call it unity consciousness, one consciousness. It's all the same. So to have human realities where you have people with billions and billions of dollars and people that have no homes, those are not realities that will survive when all realities on earth are soul aligned. Because that's one person over the other. That is not caring about the whole. It's only caring about ourselves as long as we have enough. Until these things touch our lives, we don't care about them. It's just like, we don't really believe in persecution energy unless we're getting persecuted against, and then we'll start to say it's persecution until it bothers us. And that's how our human works. It's always watching its own back. That's the only back it cares about. But that's also what our human consciousness was supposed to do. It's supposed to keep us in check. It was supposed to keep us small. And our human realities are very small. They're built on a very small concept. They're built on such a small concept of just ourselves, and we're all that matters, and we're greedy and we're selfish and we don't care about anybody else, and we can pretend like we do. We can try to put on that great face and say, it's not like we're bad humans, but we don't care to the extent we could care. We don't give to the extent we could. We don't sacrifice anything we want to share it with somebody else. We have all the blood family stuff that comes in where, it would be us. What was that old movie? Oh, I can't even think of it. Oh, God. I can't remember. It was Core God Country, and I can't remember what movie that was. Oh, crap. It was a Tom Cruise movie, and I can't remember what it was. A Few Good Men, where that was the mantra, right, for the Marines. The core, then the God, then country. I think it's how it went, yeah. Well, humans kind of the same thing. It's me, and then anyone else that bring into my small circle that is around me, which could be my blood family, or, the little family I make. But it's still everything that supports me. It's not about anybody else. It's all still about me and who supports me. Whereas when we get into soul aligned realities, we do make sure that we do a lot of self-care for ourselves, because we can't hold the vibrations we need to hold to help anybody if we don't. but that's still for the whole. There's no me in it. You know, we don't get it the way we want it a lot of times. We put up with quite a bit of backlash because, like I said, humans don't appreciate it. They will when it's their moment to go through it, but when it's not, they don't see it yet. They can't even conceptually deal with it. You know, they can't even conceptually really think about it. And I was watching something. I always kind of keep track of the whole UAP phenomenon that everyone's going crazy about right now. And it's kind of fun to watch how the mentalities and how the realities are unfolding. I listened to one person say, and it was interesting because he was starting to get the link to the consciousness. You know, consciousness increases and all of a sudden all this stuff starts to come in that you're curious about. You know, because your consciousness raises and it starts, in a way, your field starts pulling this stuff in because you're open to seeing it, you're open to understanding it, you're open to the material. You know, your body is saying that's kind of the code. We talk about Reiki being a key code, and it's trying to open you up to higher frequencies, right? Well, I would also say, you know, the UAP, aliens, the galactic stuff's the same way. A human's going to call it an alien. You know, if you're in your ascension process, you're going to call it a galactic. Galactic aspects are galactic lives that we have led and that we're concurrently living. You know, you see more of the picture because you're more open to seeing it. You know, you're more open to understanding it. Where when we're in our human box, we are so specific on how we're conditioned, how we want everything to be. If it's not like that, it's a complete failure. If we don't have this, if we don't have the car we want, if we don't have all these things, it's a complete failure. It's funny when you look at, you know, who is really, really willing to expand their consciousness. You know, it seems like sometimes it's, I'm going to say willingly, because a lot of us, we start expanding our consciousness because things aren't working out. So I don't really call that willing. In a sense, we don't understand where everything's starting to collapse, and we're going to use all these metaphysical ideas. We want to use all this higher consciousness, ascension, everything going on, all these terms people are throwing around, new earth, heaven and realities, soul non-realities, all these things people talk about. I'm going to bring those things in and look at my energy field and wait, what am I giving off? And let me really dive into that. But we're not doing it because all of a sudden we just woke up one day and said, oh, I think I'm going to do that. Sounds like a fun thing to do. There's usually something spurring us on. We want something out of it, you know. That's the carrot our soul dangles in a sense. Oh, you can get the man of your dreams or the woman of your dreams or the job of your dreams or all the wealth you'd ever want. You just got to come in and look at it from this angle, you know. It's all these promises. But it's still very human realities. We're just trying to take everything and bring it in. Not understanding that all that stuff's going to do is break the realities because they're not aligned. They're not soul aligned. Nothing we create in a human consciousness is soul aligned. None of it. None of it will be. Expect it to go. It's not soul aligned. Clearly, it's never going to be. You can tinker with it maybe a little bit. Buy some time until the next reality is ready to open up. But chances are, it's not going to survive. It sounds kind of bleak, but that's, in my experience, how a lot of that goes down. So, you know, we get into, I lost my train of thought after that. We get into, you know, these moments and these phases where we start to see so many things go away. And we're trying to just grab at anything. But you'll find that some people go more consciously into it. And sometimes those are either people who have absolutely nothing or people who are so wealthy, they are bored. And they want to look at something else because they're bored and they want something else to do, right? So you get those two extremes. Just who's really more willing to share? Normally someone who has nothing is more willing to share than someone who has a lot. Someone who has a lot is going to ask everyone else to share and support this cause or support that cause where they have enough money to do the whole thing themselves. Why are you asking everybody else to help you? You could do it. But doing it might deplete a lot of what they have and they don't want to do that. So they are interested in the cause, but they're not interested in the cause to sacrifice anything they want, or sacrifice or adjust their life in any major way. That's a lot of what we see. And that's a lot of how we are. That's the human mentality. And we have to be really honest with ourselves about how do we identify ourselves. What we're going to feel awful. We're going to allow ourselves to feel awful in certain parts of ascension, because I did it. If we look at it and say, this is not anything anyone from a human consciousness would look at and think is successful. It looks like an absolute mess right now. Everything I worked so hard for is gone. You know, what is going on? We feel shame in that. We feel all these emotions come in because we can't see the whole thing yet. You know, we don't have the capacity to see why this is happening. That why won't the money come in for me to rebuild everything? You know, why hasn't that happened yet? Well, I would have known how to rebuild it. I would have rebuilt the same thing all over again. You know, New Earth won't support Old Earth, which is human realities. And human realities won't support New Earth. It's not how it works. Money's two different frequencies, you know? One can't live in the other. One can't support the other. You're not going to get anything substantial. You'll have enough to keep going. You won't get anything substantial to really build back anything until you really understand what that means. And we've worked through all our programming that is all me, 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 me. What's in it for me? Why can't I have what I want? Me, 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 me. Until we work through that. And that's why I'm saying it can be 4 or 5, you know, like 5 years. You know, I've been in certain processes for 5 years. Because that's how long it can take to work through all of that and work through all that programming that would, where we could really see what are we supposed to do? What is highest line for me to do? I know this morning there was something that happened with my car, and I was sitting there thinking, okay, what do I want to do? What is the highest line thing for me to do here? And I'm going to wait on that for a little while. I'm going to see, what do I want to do? You know, do I want to, you know, what's the best thing for me to do here? Because I stopped making rash decisions, because that's what our human does, you know. Now, that's not saying that sometimes when you ask a question, the first thing that pops in your head is probably the what we should do, and then our ego comes in and starts distorting us back the other way. So, but sometimes for me, I'll feel like I kind of get an inkling of what I need to do. My ego might come in and try to talk me out of it. Then I'll go back to what I was supposed to do. And then the longer I sit with it, all this other stuff comes in on why I need to do it the way I need to do it. What this is going to support me to do over here. You start to see how the realities are connected and how they start to lay out. So be open to those awarenesses and don't shut them down because they don't fit human realities. Don't shut them down because they're not what we thought they would be. So, all right, I'm going to open up my chat. What time is it? Okay, about 30 minutes. That was a very, 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 very quick overview. But I think that gives everyone a lot to think about and a lot to feel into. I think I'm going to leave it there for today. Okay, I'll see everyone next time.